C. David Tulis.
If we're going to have a strong local economy and prospering families and a good prospect for the future in Chattanooga and elsewhere, we have to have a reckoning of the integrity of the family. And yet there is one great party that is hovering behind every bush, it seems, ready to overturn the family on a whim. And that is state government through the Child Protective Services, which, as we are going to hear, cavalierly takes children from their parents and wrecks family life. There is a family in eastern Tennessee, the Turners, Keshia Turner and her husband Chris, who since 2014 have been undergoing what could fairly be called an ordeal. And just a few days ago, a judge ruled that the state must return 2 sons to the Turners, Braden and Carson, immediately. And so the catastrophe finally was brought to an end, and the family reunited. This is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me just a couple minutes of your time here at Nooga Radio. We are 1240 AM and 92.7 FM, also 95.3 HD4 high definition. We're live on Facebook at Nooga Radio, and on YouTube, of course, we're live there on Hot News Talk Radio channel. We are Hot News Talk Radio, and we have this grievous account. And Keshia, thanks for joining us this morning. Tell my listener about the birth of your son, Braden, in 2014.
Well, when I was 23 weeks pregnant, my water broke and I was losing amniotic fluid. They put me on bed rest, strict bed rest. I was in the hospital for 2 months until he was born. He was born 10 weeks early. He was born at 30 weeks and 6 days, and he weighed 3 pounds and 3 ounces. And he stayed in the NICU at East Tennessee Children's Hospital for around 5 weeks and came home 5 weeks before he was due.
All right, so that was what. Go on. Tell what happened. Tell the good and the bad, Keshia.
Well, in December 2014 is when all the bad happened. Me and my family were all at my house having a little get together. You know, I was a new mom. We were just kind of celebrating everything. We were all there, and I noticed that his left leg had started to swell. So I touched it, and it was really tight feeling, and it was really warm to the touch.
I can't quite hear you. Keshia, can you not, please don't put me on speaker and speak directly into your phone. I'm not hearing you quite well enough.
Okay.
That's better. Go ahead.
I might not have good service. I'm in town. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. But his leg was swollen, and it was really red, and it was not really red. It was really hot, and it was tight. So I stripped him down, made sure he didn't have any bug bites, or if there was, a string in his pants that was, wrapped around his leg or anything like that. I couldn't find anything. So I called my husband at work, and one of his friends at work had said that it sounded like it was a blood clot. So of course I panicked. We took him to the local ER. Me and my grandmother did. When we got there, they done an ultrasound on his leg to make sure it wasn't a blood clot. It turned out not to be, so they turned around and did x-rays. They came back and said that he had a fracture in his left ankle. They told me that it was pretty common for preemies to fracture easily, and that it probably occurred during a diaper change. They wrapped it up in a little ace bandage, sent me home, and told me to follow up with his pediatrician the next day. So I take him home. I'm devastated by this point, just having one broken bone. I couldn't figure out what had gone wrong, that he had a broken bone. So he goes home. The night goes well. The next day, we take him to his pediatrician, which he's seen on a regular basis while he was at home. She walked in the room, and she was actually crying. So I knew immediately that something was wrong. She said, "Keshia, what happened?" So I told her about, his leg started to swell, everything that I just told you guys. I told them. She said, "What about the other broken bones?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Keshia, he has 15 broken ribs." That was at the time. I said, I panicked then. I called my husband. I told him to get there right now. I said, we're going to East Tennessee Children's Hospital. Something's wrong with Braden. And I told her the same thing, which she knew his whole background. She knew that he had been in the NICU. She had no problem with us taking him to East Tennessee Children's. So she wrote a note for us to be able to take him to East Tennessee Children's Hospital, because on the way to the pediatrician, the sheriff's department called me and asked me to come in to the sheriff's department after the pediatrician's office, which in my mind, that was just, you know, a routine, basically routine for an infant having a broken bone. I was fine with that. In my mind, I still wasn't clicking that I was going to be accused of abusing my child. So we get done at the pediatrician's office. We leave with the note to go to, that she strongly advised us to go to East Tennessee Children's Hospital for him to be seen. They keep us there in the sheriff's department for 3 or 4 hours. They interviewed me for about 2.5 hours. They interviewed my husband for maybe half an hour. Meanwhile, Braden is sitting in the car seat. They then tell us that, after I gave them the note and everything, they tell us that we have to take him to Vanderbilt Children's Hospital to see their child abuse team. I asked, you know, do I have to go there? Can I not take him to East Tennessee where they know all of his, you know, they know everything about him? They said, you either go to Vanderbilt by choice or you go by force. So, of course, I had nothing to hide. In my mind, these doctors were going to help my son. So we go, we load up, we go. We don't get there till around 9 or 10 p.m. We get there. They do not let us go. They do not put us in a waiting room before we go back. They put us in a conference room. I don't know what the reasoning was behind that really, but they put us in a conference room by ourselves. They take us back. They take him they put him in critical care. They done skeletal surveys, a head CT, just to make sure he didn't have any head trauma. Then they pull me and my husband aside. They separate us and interview us. You know, ask us about our relationship, about our finances, things like that. You know, we had no problem. We cooperated. We done everything that they asked us to do so that they didn't think anything was wrong, you know, with us. We just wanted them to help Braden. Well, we go back in the room after the interviews, everything, and another doctor, not Dr. Lowen. Dr. Lowen did do our interviews, but the doctor that came in and told us the diagnosis, per se, was not Dr. Lowen. She came in and told us that the only way that these injuries could have occurred was for an adult on numerous occasions to have shaken this baby, squeezed and shaken this baby, slammed him down on the floor, and either pulled, yanked, or twisted his limbs to break these bones. I told them right then, I said, that is not a possibility. I said, this baby has not left my sight except for, you know, maybe 3 hours total since he's been born. I said, there's no way. I said, something is wrong. Please. I was begging them, begging and pleading. I was crying. I was hysterical. Just please figure out what it is. I know that this baby was not abused. They just continued on. There is no other cause. There is no other cause. This is child abuse, and it was perpetrated by an adult on numerous occasions. That's all we heard. I bet 100 times. The whole time, this doctor that was accusing us of abusing Dr. Lowen at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, she never looked at this child. She never came in the room and physically examined the child herself. She came in the room on 2 different occasions. She came in to do our interviews, mine and my husband's interviews, and she came in to show me his x-rays on a computer. At this point, I didn't even know that was Dr. Lowen. I thought the woman that had told us that we had shaken our son was Dr. Lowen, because she was the one doing all of the examining. She put his IV in. She took him down to x-ray, everything. She was the one involved. Dr. Lowen, in my mind, was her. Later, I find out that Dr. Lowen is the one that done our interviews. But we stay there. We get there on December 12th, 2014. We leave the hospital December 15th, 2014. During the time we were in there, after they had claimed shaken baby syndrome, they told us that we were not going to be able to leave the hospital with our son, that we needed to pick a familial placement. So we did. I left the hospital with my son and the familial placement on December 15th. He was not in my custody. He was in custody of, DCS. At that time, which I was still begging and pleading, just please help me find the answer. But they would not. They were child abuse, strictly child abuse, nothing else, no possibilities. You did this, get out of here. So
you left Vanderbilt. Keshia, you left Vanderbilt on the 15th without your son, without Braden. Is that right? The son was in the state's hands at that point.
He was in DCS custody, but I did get to leave with the familial placement that he was going to. I rode in the car with them, but he was not in my custody any longer. But we left. I immediately started Googling. I didn't know where else to turn. I knew nobody else was going to help me figure out what was wrong. Everybody just, they immediately went to abuse, and that was it. So I knew I had to do something to prove that something was wrong with my baby. He needed help, for one, and that I did not abuse him. So my first thought, okay, I'll Google it. I literally Googled the words, baby with multiple broken ribs. That's what I Googled. Thousands and thousands and thousands of stories popped up. I mean, from the United States, from other countries, just about every state in the United States. I mean, I came across so many stories. I was baffled. There were so many. I mean, I was so terrified reading all these stories and knowing what I was about to face. And, but I knew that, I mean, it's an epidemic. Why are these doctors not seeing that this is happening all over the place and not just say it's abuse? But I started Googling. They had, we started going to court. They appointed me an attorney.
Were you indicted? Were you indicted?
What did you say?
Were you criminally charged?
No,
Keshia Turner?
I was never criminally charged.
But you had an appointed criminal defense attorney. Why is that?
I just had it wasn't a criminal defense attorney. She was just I don't know, I guess. I don't know what you would call her. All I know is that she was an appointed attorney.
Well, go ahead. Tell your story.
Go ahead. But, like I said, we started going to court. My appointed attorney at first, she came in there. She said, Keshia, just tell me what happened. Admit that you done it. We'll get you some help. I told her, I said, I did not do this. Nobody hurt this baby. There is something wrong. And I started explaining to her, my pregnancy, he was born with a deformity of his left ankle, where I had such little fluid and he wasn't moving. His left foot got stuck under him and he come out with a club foot, which was diagnosed and treated at East Tennessee Children's Hospital, where he was in the NICU. I just started telling her everything that led up to this. And she has a nursing degree, so she's kind of, she kind of knows about medical things more than I do. So the more I told her, she finally started to believe that I truly had not abused this baby, that something was wrong. So that's when I started sending her all the stuff on Google that I was finding. I was blowing her phone and an email up with different stories that are identical to mine. I mean, same broken bones, same everything. Everything is down to the T, exactly the same. So we started doing a little more digging. So then months later, maybe even, I'm not really sure exactly when I got in contact with Connie.
We're talking here about Connie regularly.
I'm sure I found her.
We're talking here about Connie Regally, who is the counsel for Keshia Turner and her husband, Chris. Go ahead, Keshia. In the interest of time, get to the part now, if you would, where you are criminally charged at some point, right? And you have a second son. What happened to the second son, Carson?
I was never criminally charged, but they did in juvenile court find me guilty of severe abuse, and they cleared my husband, and they said immediate reunification, which was never done. We followed DCS. We done everything they asked us to, all the classes, evaluations. I was even going to move out of our home so that my son could come home. In September 2015, I gave birth to my second son, Carson. We had already given temporary custody to my mother and my father to avoid the state stepping in and taking custody of him. That did not work. They come in. He was 4 days old, and the state came and got him and took him to foster care as well. They did raise our visitation a little bit. We got 3.5 hours a week versus an hour a week with the 2 children. So at least that was a plus. And then actually last week, we had gone back to court for our appeal, and the judge dismissed the case and said that, this baby was not abused, and that he was ill, and that's what caused his fractures, not abuse.
He had infantile rickets, and you had 2 doctors who spoke on your behalf at that hearing, which I think I'll ask you just briefly. Tell me how long it was. You had Dr. David Ayub and Dr. John Galaznik. What did they say, and how long a hearing was that in which they gave their testimony?
It was a 4-day trial. They both diagnosed him with osteopenia of prematurity and rickets of prematurity, which causes his bones they're not mineralized well enough as a normal baby. He's trying to grow so fast that his vitamins just aren't, there's just not enough to support his bone health. So he's very fragile, and anything, just the normal handling of him can cause all of these fractures. They both came to that conclusion just by looking at his x-rays and all of my prenatal care records and his NICU and pediatrician records.
So the judge about 10 days ago or so, right, Keshia Turner said you the parents, Keshia and your husband Chris, did nothing wrong, and the boys have to be immediately given back to you from their lost state in state hands.
Yes, she did.
Well, what damage has been done to these boys in their moral makeup, in their character makeup, in their development?
Well, they are severely delayed, both of them. Which Braden, I can kind of understand that. He was premature, so that's a little more understandable. Carson was full term. He's even more delayed than Braden. He's not speaking at all. He's almost 2 years old. He's very bow-legged. They just have a lot of problems. They have a lot of health issues. I actually had to call DCS on the foster parents myself.
Were they given vaccinations against your outside of your permission, Keshia?
Were they given what? Were they
given vaccinations without your permission?
No.
Okay.
No, they were not.
Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us, Keshia. We appreciate your joining us. This is David Tulis. We've been hearing Keshia Turner in East Tennessee, whose children, both young sons, were kidnapped by the state. This is called a medical kidnapping, and the allegations are that the parents have failed to do what's right. They've in fact done something wrong. That is the common charge, the shaken baby syndrome. And we're going to talk next with an attorney, Connie Regally, in Nashville. She is with the Law Care Family Law Center in Brentwood, and the shaken baby syndrome foundations are indeed shaky, as Connie will tell us. Keshia Turner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. This is David Tulis, and we're talking about the child abuse industry. The largest human trafficking organization in the state of Tennessee is the state itself. We have many thousands of people enslaved in prisons. And then we have also a very activist Child Protective Services that has seized overall about 6,000 children in the state as part of a massive industry, very well funded, with many of the parties, even private parties, even nonprofit organizations, churches, charities, and the like, feeding off of the money that floods in from Washington into state coffers that give a tremendous incentive for officials to seize children from innocent moms and dads, such as Chris and Keshia Turner. This is David Tulis. Thank you for joining us. We are arguing for loving your neighbor and buying local. We cover local economy in the free markets. Our show is brought to you by Nooganomics, Nooganomics.com. This is David Tulis, the writer with the biggest pen in Chattanooga, and that is our 180-foot power of amplified modulation, pulsing out the truth and analysis. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Kayakers were paddling in the bucolic Greenway Farms in Hickson when they spotted a shocking sight, a woman falling 30 feet to the ground below from a bluff. The kayakers called 911 and paddled over to assist. The Chattanooga Fire Department had to carry her for 100 yards up a steep embankment and then another 100 yards to an emergency vehicle where she was rushed to the hospital. The 20-year-old was described as stable in the ambulance. In Ray County, close to 200 people are packed into a jail that's only rated for 87. And now the fire marshal has placed a 30-day deadline on the sheriff to get the situation fixed. This is on top of a 60-day deadline from the state, also demanding the situation be alleviated. The sheriff says he's doing all he can. On July the 1st, 133 new laws will come into effect. One of them is the Tennessee Hearing Protection Act of 2017. This would allow suppressors in the state of Tennessee for firearms. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Expect a mild start to your Thursday with more clouds pushing in. Scattered showers and thunder showers are rolling from the south for the afternoon and evening. Highs lower 80s. Tonight, lingering showers diminishing. Some late fall lows 68 to 70. Continued unsettled and wet Friday and Saturday with off and on showers and thunderstorms. Check out Office Depot and Office Max. While you're taking care of business, Office Depot and Office Max are taking care of you with all working pro chairs and Magellan furniture on sale through the 4th of July. And I'm Storm Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr. On Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree? Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
We've got a table here at Delia's, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection. Loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, near the Thrasher Light. Quesadillas, smell them coming. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos made fresh every morning. Delia's, open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch or dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. Mention Sean Hannity and save a dime on every dollar of your tab. Yep, 10% for the Nooga Radio listener.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
Hi, this is Nadia behind the green door. You've had ice cream and you've had shaved ice, but have you had snow cream? It is amazing. It's light, airy, fruity snowflakes melting on your tongue. You need to come and see us. Highway 58, green door next to Hardee's.
I've got a $10 bill for you at the best paint store in Chattanooga. David here. Hi. Big savings right now on paint and stains. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. More than a paint store. Ring up a can and keep that $10 bill. Save on select paints and stains at Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. More than a paint store. Pittsburgh, Porter, Glidden, Prolux, Olympic, Flood. $10 a can. Savings this week. Jim and his team are here to help and advise. And to help you hold on to your money. 5529 Hickson Pike. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. ChattanoogaPaint.com.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
We have today a remarkable story, which you can read if you can't stay with us but a minute. You can read about at Nooganomics.com, and that is the story of Chris and Keshia Turner in East Tennessee. They've just gotten back their two sons, Braden and Carson, whom were kidnapped by the state of Tennessee, the Child Protective Services, a part of the executive branch serving Governor Bill Haslam. Bill Haslam and his executive branch raiding families, you might say, skimming children off and giving employment and incomes for not just state officials, but many other hangers-on in the official state-run child abuse industry. There are about 6,000 or 7,000 children in state custody today, and many of them are there without really having a reason to be there. But they're there because there is their financial interest, their money interest to be served in having them trafficked away from their families and into foster care and other arrangements by the state. We hear from Keshia Turner about her son's birth. Braden was born prematurely, 10 weeks early, and when she was accused of child abuse, the x-rays showed 15 broken ribs, and the accusation against her was that she had shaken her baby and abused him, and so she and her husband lost custody of Braden. And then when Carson was born in September of 2015, the state, after 4 days outside the womb, seized him as well. Her arrangements to have a relative care for that boy amid the struggle with the state of no account. Now, serving families like the Turners is an attorney in Brentwood, Tennessee, Connie Regularly. She has been for 23 years defending family integrity and seeking to boost, in the case of every one of her families, local economy and free markets in those towns. Her name is Connie Regularly. She runs the Law Care Family Law Center, and is going to tell us about the hearing, a kind of quasi-criminal trial that takes place, and that in the Turner's case took place in juvenile court. It's a bizarre jurisdiction where there is not it's not exactly civil jurisdiction. It's not exactly criminal jurisdiction, but there has to be clear and convincing evidence. And the hearing through which the Turners were put was to find justification for the state's keeping these two sons. Connie, what happened at that hearing? When was it? Where was it? And what happened?
So we just finished the hearing last Friday, June the 24th. And just so the listeners kind of understand that our juvenile court system and what's called the dependency and neglect system, which is what DCS operates under, starts in juvenile court. And the way the law is written in the statute is that the parents, if their children are removed, they're entitled to what's called a de novo hearing, or a brand new start from scratch, present your evidence hearing, which is a little bit different when what most people think of as an appeal, which generally an appeal that goes to the Court of Appeals has to be upon the testimony that's already been proffered. So we were able to get, finally, after 3.5 years, we were able to get our de novo hearing in front of a circuit court judge, and she dismissed everything after we had already been through a 4-day trial in juvenile court, and where the juvenile court judge had dismissed every bit of medical evidence that we had presented in behalf of the parents.
Now, what evidence did your side offer to suggest that Braden had not been abused and that his broken bones were medically, biologically caused?
Okay, so this is really the crux of something that is happening, and it's devastating. It's devastating to families. In 2009, the American Medical Association created a new specialty called a child abuse specialist. This is a doctor who is now, they're employed by every major children's hospital across the country, and they're giving a medical diagnosis of child abuse, which I argue is not a medical diagnosis at all. It's a legal conclusion, and they need to be giving medical diagnoses and not legal conclusions. Well, rheumatoid arthritis is a medical diagnosis. Child abuse is not. So they have these doctors in, and as you heard Keshia tell you, this is a young couple, and let me tell you, I mean, I work with a lot of families. I see a lot of cases. I mean, I do see cases where their, parents have some drug issues, or they have other things that, really need some help with, but there's no drugs with this young couple. I mean, there's no history of violence. I mean, this young couple in this small community was really pristine, close to their family, had a lot of family connections. They had people come in court and testify. Keshia had never, her grandma came in and said she'd never even been in trouble. So we have this young couple, small community, premature baby, a small community pediatric office, which was actually a nurse practitioner and not a pediatrician, but she believed mom was doing a great job. And this premature baby who had been treated well, actually at East Tennessee Children's, was then released to the parents. But now here was the first mistake. When East Tennessee Children's released this baby, they did not give these parents any special instructions. They did not say to these parents, you have a baby that's premature, there might be metabolic bone disease, there might be other issues. I mean, the child was obviously born with some respiratory issues. He had ongoing respiratory conditions. These young parents, who were just barely 20 years old at the time, were not really given good instruction. So by the time they take their baby home, he's 4 pounds, which is still a tiny little baby. He's basically still a month premature. They're taking him home, and, he grew like crazy. Over the next 2 months, he doubled his size. And what happened, and here's what our medical experts took 9.5 hours explaining to the court system, is that in the growth of these bones, and the rapid growth of these bones, you have this baby who has already been compromised. She had lost the amniotic fluid. He wasn't able to move, which causes the strengthening of the bones. She had an infarction in her placenta, which meant that he wasn't getting all the proper nutrients. When he was born, he was given breast milk, which means he wasn't getting vitamin D supplementation like he needed. And so you have this baby who left NICU with all of this medical compromise situation. And our medical expert actually, from the x-ray, measured these ribs, and he showed the judge exactly how little teeny tiny these ribs are. I mean, the closest thing I can give you as an example is if you're holding a ballpoint pen and you look at not the end of the pen, but you look at that little pocket slider, the little thing that attaches to your pocket if you put your pen in your pocket. Those little ribs were about the width of that little pocket slider. And he said they are so fragile, they're not mineralized properly. So bones are created by cartilage being put into place, or they sometimes call it a precursor material. And then while the body is growing, those bones begin to mineralize. Well, here's the other problem, is that our bodies need calcium, and it needs calcium for every single muscle in the body, including our heart. And if there's not enough calcium for the heart to operate properly, the body is going to steal calcium from the bone. And so you have this very rapidly growing baby. You have a baby who's vitamin D deficient, which means he cannot metabolize his calcium. And then you have, as he's growing, his body and his functioning needs calcium, and it's just not getting properly fit into the bone. Now, when you look at an x-ray, and I'm a layperson, I mean, I am not a doctor, I have no medical training, but when you look at the x-rays in this baby, and they took 2 sets, they took x-rays in December 2014, and then they took another set of x-rays in January of 2015. And they did that because they wanted to see if there were additional rib fractures that they had missed that were beginning to heal. But what was most important is that it really showed a very distinctive, that even a lay person could see, a distinctive change in the ends of the bones. Now, what Vanderbilt had said is that because the end of every long bone, so the shin bone, the leg bone, the arm bone, at the end of every one of those long bones, Vanderbilt had said they were fractured. They said that this baby, as you heard Keshia say, had to be slammed down, squeezed, yanked, all of their limbs yanked and twisted and shaken. They said multiple times that the only way these injuries could have occurred if this baby was shaken, twisted, squeezed, and there wasn't one internal injury, and there was not one broken bone, and there was not one rib fracture that was displaced. So all these tiny little rib fractures were just basically a hairline fracture in the bone. So they wanted a court to believe that you could crush this baby with these tiny little fragile bones and not displace a single bone, not cause a single internal injury, and not cause a bruise, and have absolutely no head injury. So we had a radiologist from Illinois who has taken this issue to heart and studied metabolic bone disease, and we did him by video deposition, 4 hours of testimony. We then put on a live witness who was 5 hours of testimony, and I had him go through the metaphysics of the development of these bones, these baby bones. And at the conclusion of this, the judge said that she found that there were mimics of child abuse from medical conditions that had been ignored by Vanderbilt and DCS.
And what happened then?
So we were able, at the end of the second hearing, she flat out dismissed the department's petition, and they gave the children back that day. So it is, these juvenile proceedings, they're not really criminal. The burden of proof is clear and convincing, which is a little bit higher than a preponderance of the evidence, but not as high as beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal case. But when we went through the first hearing in juvenile court, and that juvenile court judge said that baby had been crushed by the mother, and we were sure, and you can't, this mom, Keshia, is a very, very strong person, and when she talks today, she's able to articulate it, in a very good fashion. But I've seen this mama break down twice and just fall apart. And at the end of that juvenile court trial, she just broke down and bawled and knew that they were going to come in and arrest her. And honestly, we were afraid they were going to put her in jail. And there are parents across this country, I am telling you, there are parents in prison because of this. I know personally of cases. There's one going on in Kentucky right now that I'm considering getting involved in. There's one in East Tennessee that the parents already been put in prison. There are parents in prison because of this. And this is just devastating because it's not just the parent in prison. It's the whole entire destruction of this family on ignoring that there are child abuse medical conditions that mimic child abuse. So this whole child abuse industry, which I've been barking about for years, and people are finally starting to come around and understand it is truly an industry. It is just the foster care and child welfare agencies alone. It is a $16 billion industry in this country. And that does not include all the ancillary services that go along with it.
Well, who are some of the hangers-on of the child abuse industry?
Privatizing foster care. And I have to say this because Tennessee is just an abomination of what they did. When Governor Haslam got elected, he appointed Jim Henry to serve as the commissioner of the Department of Children's Services. Jim Henry is the CEO of the largest private contractor of foster care services in this state. From the term that he served as commissioner from 2011 to 2015, his company made $253 million off the taxpayers of Tennessee. And then Haslam moved him to his chief of staff, and he still has that company, and he's still profiting over the taking of children. Now, people have heard about this in the privatization of prisons. They've heard about it in the privatization of probation systems and other systems, and it is absolutely the same thing that is happening not only in Tennessee but across this country in the privatization of foster care. It has become a for-profit business, and what happens when you have a for-profit business, David? Those for-profit businesses start lobbying, and they start controlling the legislature. So you have the executive branch putting a commissioner in place who's profiting. You have those private agencies, and then you have those private agencies going and lobbying for laws that promote the continuation of their Services and their profit.
Do workers in the Child Protective Services field, Connie, regularly have immunities that are somehow striking or unusual or dangerous?
Well, thank you for asking that, because, you know, all these parents, and you know, we have a Facebook group that's called the Family Forward Project, and we're about 6,000 people who are in that group who are being affected all over this country. And everybody always asks me, can we sue? Can we sue? Can we sue? Well, there are civil rights violations that are occurring all the time. There are Fourth Amendment rights for the wrongful removal and retention of children. There are 14th Amendment rights for due process violations and wrongful government interference with familial integrity. And the state, if you are in a state that the agency is run by the state, which it is in Tennessee, then the state has immunity, cannot sue the state. You cannot sue the workers in their official capacity because that is the state. You cannot sue the judges because the judges have immunity. You have to sue the individual caseworkers in their individual capacity, which you can do, and the state will defend them. Whether or not the state would pay off under those circumstances, I don't know. But now here's an interesting side of that has come up. It has long been held, and this started with the privatization of the prison system, it has long been held that if a private contractor takes on the role of a government function, they can be sued for a civil rights violation, for due process violations, for Fourth Amendment violations, and that is, and you can sue them. So, and the case, the longstanding case that's out there, the reasoning under that is that the privatization of a government function, those private industries are for profit, and they have the ability to get insurance that can cover their misdeeds. Well, 2 years ago, the Tennessee General Assembly tried to pass a bill that would cap any damages against a private contractor that was contracting with the Child Welfare Agency and give them basically the same protections under the Government Tort Liability Act, which would be a cap of $300,000. Now, guess who do you think was out lobbying for that bill? The private contractors, which is just as I was saying. Now, it did not pass, but I suppose it will raise its ugly head again. Well, why would they be out lobbying for that bill if they were not afraid that they were going to be sued?
What kind of cases are happening in the Chattanooga area that you know of, Connie, that typify this problem?
I've had cases. I've been down to Chattanooga. I've had clients that I've represented down there. I'm also in close contact with a attorney who's trying to help defend some parents down there, and trying to give some other attorneys as help as we can. I mean, they are all over. I can only handle maybe a dozen or 24 cases at a time. I have to turn down cases every day. We are having a Tennessee meeting August the 19th in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, that is open to all families who have been affected by DCS and believe that their children have been wrongfully removed or wrongfully retained. If I can get enough parents and families involved, I will file a class action lawsuit against the Department of Children's Services for wrongful removal and wrongful retention.
And just briefly, what is the proposed meeting in Murfreesboro? Just state the time, the date, and how my listener could find out details.
Okay, in August 19th, and it's in Murfreesboro. And the best way to really find out about it, I'm sorry I don't have that address right with me this morning. I didn't know I'd have the opportunity to talk about it. But in the Family Forward Project, which is an open public group on Facebook, if anybody's involved with that, and actually I will send that information to you so you can post it on your site as well. But it is, we're going to do it at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon so people can come from all over the state. And it is and I'm going to have a pre-meeting package for people to provide for me to basically give a basic history about their case. I mean, I am looking particularly for people who believe they've been wronged by the system, and wrongful removal, wrongful retention of their children, not failing to return their children, failing to acknowledge relative placement, to keep that familial integrity in place. So it is to collect that information. I had a meeting in January of this year. I had a nice meeting. People can actually, here's another thing, if they want to learn more, this is an easy way to do it. All you have to do is go to YouTube and type in Connie Regularly, CONNIE-REGULI, and there are several videos that I've posted, many on presentations that I've given to different groups. I've been in Florida, I've given a presentation. I've been, of course, done presentations here in Tennessee, and I'm open. I'm scheduling presentations in South Carolina, Kansas, and Iowa, because this is going on in every state. So I will provide that information. You can post it, and also I highly encourage people to get involved through our Facebook group of the Family Forward Project.
The listener may want to go to Nooga Radio on Facebook. We'll put the details there. And again, just in a nutshell, it's August the 19th, which is Saturday in Murfreesboro. It's early afternoon, just after lunchtime, and it will be an event on wrongful removal. And Connie Regularly, the attorney in Brentwood, is looking for members possibly of a class action against the state for wrongful removal. Connie Regularly, thank you for talking to me. And my listener.
Thank you, and thank you, David.
This is David Tulis. We thank you for giving us a minute of your time. We've been talking about the child abuse industry, the medical kidnap system, which has grown up around government and within government, and that makes families with children who have medical problems vulnerable to have these children seized, and a tremendous ordeal that has just ended for the Turners. This is David Tulis. Thank you for joining us. David Tulis, I've got some important messages.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Do I need to talk with you? I've got an inside track on a career change. Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your people skills and ability to be sympathetic to a listener, but also close on a sale in the same meeting? Tough assignment, I know. With a couple of weeks of training under your belt, you can become a licensed agent working for yourself, but not by yourself. Ask for Steve or Jada, 855-8484. Find out about the job, 855-8484. You'll have your first paycheck in 4 weeks.
Got vacation plans? For four-legged family members left behind.